Hi, my name is Looney, and this is part 2 of my watercolor tutorial, and this one is the short version. This will have time-lapse photography and shorter information in it. I've got a long version that is real-time and it goes in depth, and I've got a lot longer narrative. Here is the finished piece. If you saw part 1, then you saw these other 4 points of stretching watercolor on boards, of selecting your reference, making your thumbnails, transferring the drawing. In this one, we're going to do the painting step by step and finish it without a mat or a glass. This is, as I said, the short version. You'll notice the finger pointing up in the corner. You will see some notifications periodically. If you click on those, they will take you either to part 1 if you hadn't seen it before, or to the longer version if you would prefer to have it. Here is the way this is going to be working with the time-lapse photography. The colors here are your sunshine, your lighter colors. You put those down first. I'm using a number 12 round brush, and I'm going to be working consistently throughout this whole demo, going back and forth from my flowers to my background. I'm not going to finish out any one area before I go to the next. I want to try and bring up the whole painting together, all these areas together at one time. This is how I usually approach a piece, whether it's watercolor, a drawing, or acrylics. And then this particular one is more dry brush, dry on dry. And that's another reason for going from one to another. That gives me time for the flowers to set up or for the background to set up, so that if they aren't, maybe not completely dry, but it's set up enough to where I don't get a lot of run or the colors blending. I have, at the end of this, I have a supply list that tells you exactly what I was using. The colors, this is a mostly Grumbacher. You can see a corner of my palette to the right. I have a particular one that has 18 wells in it, 9 on each side. I've got my warm colors on one side, my cool colors on another. I use different brands of watercolors, so there's a mixture in there. And I also don't clean mine very often. I like all of those mixed colors in those wells in the middle. I've got 9 wells, and I oftentimes would use those grays or those mixed colors. Because of the composition of this, I'm using that background more as a vehicle to make the flowers stand out. So I'm not nearly as concerned in putting as much detail in the leaves, in the stem, and the grasses as I am the flowers themselves. Plus, I'm using a very limited palette. It's primarily complementary colors. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that comes under knowing your color wheel as well as color theory. There are lots of very good tutorials on YouTube that can talk about that, and I can go into that in more detail in a future videos. So now I've switched back from the background back to the flowers, and it looks like I'm putting black down, but I'm not. I almost never use black. I do not recommend using black or Payne's gray. I'm dipping into a little bit of purple, a little bit of red, and a little bit of phthalo green to make that really, really dark color. And again, working the flowers, slowly beginning to put detail in, and the values. And then soon I'll switch back to the background. This is 140-pound hot press paper stretched on wooden stretcher bars. The full process is in version number 1. And if you've never seen watercolor paper stretched on those, it's really interesting. This thing is as tight as a little drum head. It has a little bit of a bounce, a little give to it. I really like it. but it makes for a very nice painterly surface to work with. What I'm also doing in this one is putting the primary focus of the video right up front, so you immediately get into it. The elements of finishing it out and doing the thumbnails, my supply list, the materials that I'm using, I'm putting that in the back of the video. Each one will have a timestamp, and if you're not familiar with that, you go down to the description, and where I've got some paragraphs that explain what's going on. If you scroll on down into that, you'll see a timestamp, and this will be on all of my instructional videos. That way, if there's something in particular that you're looking for or you want to hear again, instead of trying to scrub back and forth through the video to try and find it, you can see that in the timestamp. It's like an outline. So I'm trying to incorporate as many useful methods and systems in this as I develop these tutorials, but ultimately I will be dependent on your feedback, your comments, and hopefully constructive constructive criticism. I'm open to, I'm reading them, I'm listening to you, so I appreciate. Now I'm switching to greens. I've got in all these colors that I'll be listing, I've got a warm color green, a cool color, warm yellow, cool yellow, warm red, cool red. Letting the purple dry in between. When I go back and I paint the green on it, the green sits on top instead of blending in with the purple. That's the dry on dry technique. And again, I'm skipping around. I'm giving just an indication of some of that movement of the grasses and the leaves, but I'm not trying to do any kind of detail work. And you will also notice I will take that painting around the edge. Since this piece was stretched on stretcher bars, the paper is pulled completely around the edge and stapled on the back. Theoretically, I don't have to put this in a frame once I'm finished and I have it sealed. What I'll be able to do is, when it's finished and I've sealed it, I can put a hanger on it and hang it immediately on the wall. Not necessary for a mat, not necessary to have it under glass. Again, you see I go from the background and now I'm switching back to the flowers. Continuing to add color. The main brush that I've used throughout this whole process is a number 12 round. And I really like that because I can either get a very thin line, or I can, with more pressure, I can push down and I can get a broader stroke. Plus, a larger brush allows me to carry a lot more pigment in the brush. So many of my beginner students, they'll grab for that small brush almost immediately. And in watercolors, if you're unsure of your drawing, you can work it with watercolor pencils. That way those colors will blend as you're painting, but you won't get a harsh line like you will with a graphite pencil, or you won't have the necessity to go in and erase it, which anytime you're doing something like that will affect the surface of the paper. No matter how gentle you are, you're disturbing the surface of the paper. This hot press is very smooth. It's very illustrative, so I can get a lot of fine line detail. The 140-pound paper is a very good weight for stretching. I don't recommend anything less than 140 pound for anything. It works better in stretching because it's pliable enough to go around the wood frame without breaking, cracking. See on that edge? Nice smooth fold all the way around. 300-pound paper is just a little too heavy. Even after soaking, it'll crack, it'll break. So I'm intensifying my darks. Watercolors typically dry lighter than what you put down. Again, with my beginners, they often are using way too much water. They put color down and they think, oh my goodness, that's just too much. And by the time it dries, it's faded out. So you can be bold. You can also go back and lighten these areas if you decide you've gotten it too dark. You can take a dipstick, which is a little instrument that is great. You're just using clear water on the tip, and you can gently modify an area by stroking with a dipstick and then blotting up the color or the pigment, or a plain brush. But with my beginners, I never had that problem. They never get too much. It's usually not enough. With this dry technique, I can also go back to all these areas because I'm putting a lot of pigment down. And I can take a brush, a clean brush with just water on it that's been blotted out, almost dry, and I can go in and activate some of those areas, all those little dots. I could wet those and they would bleed, and I can take that paint and I can move it around. I can move that pigment around. But I'm purposely using this very dry brush, dry on dry. And there's the final thumbnail along with the final piece. I'll have some close-up work here. I hate to say it, but I lost some footage. I am a beginner at this, in this editing. I'm a one-man operation here as far as filming and editing and copywriting and you name it, I'm doing it all. And somehow or another, I lost some footage. So there's a little bit of a segment on doing that last bit of detail work. And that last bit of detail work is done with China White. And that's all something I usually don't recommend in doing opaque on watercolor. But when I got through with this and I looked down at it, my green and my purple was a little too intense. And I wanted a little more of the feel of that movement and that crisscross effect that the grasses, the stems, and the leaves get. Now, this is what I want to share with you. I've just discovered this myself. This is a wax. It's called Dorland's Wax Medium. There's several different makers that carry it. Here it is, just plain white wax. I dip in, I'm getting about, I don't know, half to a teaspoon, and I'm just beginning with clean hands to spread that across my watercolor in a circular motion. And you'll notice you do not see a change in the color. It does not affect the color. It doesn't make it lighter. It doesn't make it darker. It doesn't make it bleed. And I simply cover that whole area. In the first video, not the first video. In the long version, I also have a soundtrack that's going along with this, so you can literally hear. And that's how I know, other than taking it and moving it to see where I have been. I only put one coat of wax on, and now I'm buffing it off with a cotton scrap rag. Old pillowcase or cup towel, I don't remember. It's just white cotton, and also in a circular motion. And I'm carrying this wax treatment around the edges because in handling, I don't want fingerprints, grime, grunge, water damage, circles, anything. So I'm protecting it from that. I did this in a demo in my classes, and to illustrate how thorough this sealant is, I took some water and I sprinkled it on top of my watercolor. I had several people that were sucking air. They were going, oh! And what did the water do? Did it circle it? Did it damage it? No. It beat it up just like it would on a newly waxed vehicle, all the way over the edge. Now it's ready for a hanger and ready to hang. Okay, here's the thumbnails. This is the original picture. And very quickly, I worked thumbnails. And I worked the thumbnails in the same manner that I would do on my big painting. this is a, how can I put it? It's like a rehearsal for what you're going to be doing on the big one. And it's a great place for you to work out problems, issues. Do it small instead of on your big piece, especially in watercolor. You don't have lots of chances. It's not like acrylics where if you mess it up, you can just let it dry, paint over it, and do it again. In watercolor, it's good to know where you're going and how you're going to get there. So a thumbnail is a wonderful way of figuring that out. And these thumbnails are a standard size of 2.5 by 3.5 inches, which is an ACEO. That stands for Art Card Edition and Originals. And I'll go into that in another video. I'll explain a lot more about that. Did a little touch up here. I'm using a little turquoise to alter that color in the background. So I'm finishing that one out, and then here are the other thumbnails. And I chose the one with a little more drama. For these, I'm going to have closed captions, timestamps, long version, short version, but most importantly, that last line of feedback in the comments. With your feedback, then I can help to make these more usable for you. The number 12 brush is the predominant one, and be sure to have a watercolor pencil. In this case, I used a gray. Here are my tube colors, and reiterate that I had a cool yellow, warm yellow, cool red, warm red, cool green, and a warm green. If you enjoyed this, by all means, please hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go through the hour-long long version, click on it, or go to part 1 if you missed out on that one. Thanks for your feedback. I appreciate it. I'll see you next time.